For 20 years, the man walked the same street every night. Not earlier, not later. Always at the same hour, when the shops had closed and the streetlights hummed softly above the empty sidewalks. People who lived nearby had noticed him, of course. It is impossible not to notice someone who repeats the same quiet ritual for that long. At first, they thought he was simply walking for exercise. Then they thought he was lonely. Later, they stopped guessing. But they never stopped watching. The street itself was ordinary. A bakery stood on one corner, its windows fogged with the memory of morning bread. Across from it was a small grocery store that closed before sunset. A bus stop leaned slightly to the left, as if tired from waiting for buses that always came too late. Nothing about the street suggested it should matter to anyone, except to the man. Every night he began at the same place, the old bookstore at the far end of the block. The shop had closed years ago, but the faded sign still hung above the door, its letters barely visible. From there, he walked slowly down the street. He never rushed. He never stopped for long. But his eyes moved carefully, as if searching. Some nights he paused beside the bus stop. Other nights he stood beneath the street lamp halfway down the road, staring at the ground as though something important had once fallen there. The people who watched him from their windows wondered what he was looking for. Money, perhaps. A memory. A mistake. The truth was simpler and heavier than all of that. He was looking for a moment. 20 years earlier, this same street had looked almost identical. The same bakery, the same bus stop, the same tired street lamp flickering slightly above the pavement. But that night, the street had been full of rain. The kind of rain that blurs the edges of everything. Lights, buildings, thoughts. The kind that makes a person feel as if the world is moving slower than usual. The man had been younger then. He had walked beside someone. A woman with a quiet voice and a laugh that arrived slowly but stayed longer than expected. They had been arguing, not loudly, not angrily, just the kind of tired disagreement that comes when two people love each other, but cannot seem to understand the same future. "You never listen," she had said gently. "I do listen," he insisted. But even as he said the words, he knew they were not entirely true. They stopped beneath the street lamp. Rain ran down the woman's hair and onto her coat. She looked tired, not from the weather, but from something deeper. "I'm not asking you to change everything," she said. "I'm asking you to notice." He looked away. Sometimes people look away, not because they disagree, but because they suddenly understand something they wish they had realized earlier. The rain continued. Cars passed slowly through the intersection, their lights stretching across the wet pavement like fragile lines of gold. After a long moment, the woman spoke again. "If you keep walking through life like this," she said softly, "one day you're going to realize you missed something important." The man almost answered, but hesitation has a way of arriving exactly when it shouldn't. And before he could say anything, the bus arrived. She stepped onto it, not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. The door closed, the bus pulled away, and the rain continued to fall. At the time, he believed he would see her again the next day, or the day after that, or the next week. But life has a way of rearranging time without warning. She moved away. Letters were written. Then fewer letters. Eventually, none. Years passed. The man returned to the street for the first time months later. He didn't come looking for her. Not exactly. He came looking for the moment he had lost. The moment beneath the street lamp when he could have answered differently. The moment when listening might have changed everything. Of course, moments cannot be found once they are gone. But that did not stop him from searching. So he walked. At first only occasionally, then once a week, eventually every night. People assumed he was exercising, or thinking, or remembering. All of those things were true, but mostly he was practicing something he had learned too late: attention. On quiet nights, he noticed small details the younger version of himself would have missed. The way the bakery smelled faintly of sugar even after closing. The sound the bus stop bench made when the wind pushed against it. The exact place where the street lamp light touched the pavement in a pale circle. He stood there often, sometimes for several minutes, as if hoping the past might briefly overlap with the present. One evening, nearly 20 years after the rain-soaked argument, something unexpected happened. The bus stopped. This was not unusual, but someone stepped off. A woman. She stood for a moment beside the bench, adjusting a scarf around her neck. The man watched from across the street, not because he recognized her, but because something about the scene felt strangely familiar. She looked up. Their eyes met. And suddenly, the past moved closer. It was not exactly the same woman he remembered. Time had softened the sharp edges of youth. The years had left quiet lines around her eyes. But it was her. She recognized him too. For a moment, neither of them moved. The street lamp hummed above them. Finally, she laughed, a small, surprised laugh. "You're still walking here," she said. The man nodded. "I suppose I am." She looked down the street, then back at him. 20 years is a long time to walk the same road. He considered that. "Yes," he said slowly. "But sometimes it takes that long to understand where you were supposed to stop." They sat on the bench beneath the street lamp. For a while, they said nothing. Silence between strangers can feel awkward, but silence between people who once knew each other well can feel like an old room, familiar even after years away. "Why did you keep coming back?" she asked eventually. The man looked at the pavement. "I think I was hoping I might find the moment I lost." She smiled gently. "You can't find moments." "No," he agreed, "but you can learn from them." The bus arrived again. This time, neither of them rushed. They spoke a little longer, not about the past in detail, not about blame or regret, just about the quiet things people carry through the years. Before she stepped onto the bus, she paused. "You know," she said, "that night under the street lamp, I wasn't asking you to have all the answers." "I know," he said. "I was just asking you to listen." The man nodded slowly. "I finally learned how." The bus doors closed. The street returned to its usual stillness. The man stood beneath the lamp for a moment longer. Then he began walking again. But this time he was not searching for the past. He was simply walking forward. And after 20 years, that felt like enough.